please tell us about cases where government ownership has worked. I'm assuming this is bureaucratic ownership as governments changed. And how has continuity been seen through with true ownership of government coming in? In perhaps a program like this that you're talking about.
A civil society intervention led to
Yeah.
government ownership and continuity. But I'll now talk about a program that we at Tech Mahindra Foundation have now been running for the last 12 years. Back in 2013, so the context is the Municipal Corporation of Delhi schools, right? At that time, in end of 2012, we had three MCDs. We had the East, North, and South Delhi municipal corporations. Now, for those who are not aware, the MCD all put together runs close to 1,500 primary schools. It has close to 20,000 teachers. It has close to 850,000 children as part of one single system. Probably it is one of the largest single largest primary education system in any city in the world, right? Governed by the Municipal Corporation of Delhi. So in 2012, end of 2012, the then commissioner of the East Delhi Municipal Corporation invited Tech Mahindra Foundation to first do a study to understand, what are the challenges when it comes to training of teachers. And we conducted that study. And a lot of interesting things came up. And then the commissioner invited Tech Mahindra Foundation to run their in-service teacher education institute. Right now, we also at that time were just about 5 years old. Tech Mahindra Foundation, started in 2006, and then just about 5-6 years. So even we started, a little gingerly, not very sure. But thanks to the drive that the then CEO had, and of course I had by then got associated as a consultant. In fact, that survey that we did with the EDMC school was done by me and Sajid, who's now the COO of Tech Mahindra Foundation. We were both part of this entity called EduLever that I had founded as part of my journey. So that was the sort of the starting point. Now, it took us almost about 3 years to really establish ourselves in the East Delhi Municipal Corporation as an organization that could handle teacher training for the teachers. I think the thing that kept us going was that A, we saw the need, and B, we saw the importance of showing up. So what we told the team that was there, just show up. Just be there every day without fail, making sure that the teachers and everybody else is seeing you over there. And finally, so we started this, I think, in about April 2013. But it was only in mid-2016 that the EDMC then said that, okay, you're doing a decent job, we'll give you a larger space to work with. So they gave us a much larger building, which was nice. And then we spent some money to, create a state-of-the-art training institute. And by then we had expanded the team also, so things were working. And then in 2018, the North Delhi Municipal Corporation also asked us to take up their in-service teacher education institute. So they entered into a separate MOU with us to run that. So we started that. With this, while EDMC had about 400 schools, the North Delhi, which is much larger, has almost about 800 schools. So all the 1,200 schools came to us. And then in 2022, the three MCDs merged, or rather re-merged, because there used to be one at one point in time. And then the South Delhi Municipal Corporation, they also asked us to run their in-service teacher education institute. So we are now, Tech Mahindra Foundation has been running the in-service teacher education institutes for all the MCDs, which means that we have the sacred responsibility of ensuring that the teachers undergo continuous professional development. Why has this worked? Because despite political changes, despite bureaucratic changes, we have been there, a lot of good intent, getting the right kind of resources, people who are there, and most importantly, taking this work as religion. This is something that we put a lot of thought into. And eventually it is the teachers who have succeeded for us. They are the ones who've gone back and said that, hey, we like going for these training workshops. And that word has spread. So when we started, we used to face this huge challenge of teachers not showing up, right? But now if you go to when we are conducting these training institutes, we don't have to run after them to get them to the ITIs. They come on their own. And this is just an example where I think we've just by being there, doing the right things, showing up.
That's great. And I think, you're talking about in-service teacher training. This is an idea and a need that is so pressing in this country at the moment. There is a lot of ambition to bring teachers in to the schools that are basically don't have teachers at the moment. There's a huge gap. And I want to tie this back to what you're saying. Here is an experiment done by Tech Mahindra Foundation that created enough goodwill in the stakeholders to expand to 3 parts of the MCD. And this could be a model for in-service teacher training across many more states, I hope.
Yeah.
Because it's deep learning that's come from there. Of course, there'll be language issues, but and I'm glad that there's been government ownership. And I think it's fascinating to hear that just being there and standing through has been the strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been a very, very important reason why we've succeeded, at least till now.
Feet on the ground, essentially.
Feet on the ground.
Yes.
I mean, feet on the ground, head on your shoulders.
Yes.
That's
yes.
what it is.
Excellent. Chetan, I just want to now kind of again bring all these experiences together and move up the sort of chain as we speak. Tech Mahindra Foundation strategy to put feet on the ground and remain focused and then build the goodwill to expand. Please tell me about the other seat to sit on now, where you see the discussions happening around large philanthropic capital coming in to solve various issues. Where do you think, if you could have a conversation with a philanthropist today who's on the brink of deploying serious capital to any area, what would you be saying to them? Would it be this sort of experience that you've gained around going in the direction that you just mentioned? Or do you think they have to take bolder, risky moves? Or can they drive advocacy itself or research? Where do they come in? How do they deploy serious capital to social problems?
Of course, it'll depend on what their priorities are, both thematically as well as, to what extent do they want to do that? How much capital do they intend to bring? Many of these variables there. But I think it's important to understand that even philanthropy is clearly, and if I sort of distance myself a little bit, I can see that we are undergoing a pivot here. Let us look at the context of corporate social responsibility funding, right? Which became a mandate in this country back in 2013-14. Now, at the time that this became a mandate and corporates were expected to give 2% of their profits before taxes towards corporate social responsibility, initially, and not surprisingly, boardrooms saw this as an additional tax that the government is imposing on you. There was a lot of debate and discussion around, why should this be? And India is, by the way, the only country to have a mandate such as this. And then there was also the fact that in the initial draft of Section 135 of the Companies Act, there wasn't a punitive clause around this, right? So there was more of a wait and watch phase that we saw, where people were just kind of trying to figure out what's going to happen. In 2021, the government had introduced some certain very significant amendments, which gave far more teeth to the act itself, right? But what had also happened by the time these amendments came about, the COVID had happened, right? And COVID was probably one of the biggest social disasters that we've seen in this country for the last many decades, right? We knew what happened, our healthcare and our education. Practically every system was stretched to bits during that time. The several realities that also surfaced at that time pointed to the direction that the kind of problems that we are addressing in this country are so complex, layered, and humongous that no philanthropist, no foundation, no single organization can really think of solving the problem for the entire country, right? It's not like you to do a technology plugin and it gets solved, right? It's far more. I'm talking about, challenges of education and livelihoods and healthcare, which continue to be focused on having a very large workforce, a large part of large human intervention at the heart of it, right? So the obvious realization that I think has come since then is that pooled and patient capital is what is really the need of the hour, right? It is where you need to, in order to really take bigger bets of solving at scale, you need to collaborate. You need to collaborate at the implementation, I would say even at the planning and designing level, at the implementation level, and at the funding level, right? And even at the advocacy level. So I think that is something which is, I would like to believe, is a gradual shift, probably still under the surface, which is begin to happen. But more and more, of these philanthropy convenings that I've been a part of recently, we are seeing the need that if you really have to move the needle in a big way, you have to come together. CSRs are being, asked. I know that, the Convergence Foundation, for example, or many such, Bridgespan, which is a Bain offshoot, has recently come up with this statistic where it's actually spoken about how a pooled capital or a collaborative approach towards has a far greater chance of actually solving it, right? So you have these examples now emerging, and therefore, if I were to speak to a philanthropist, I would first want to understand how much of a collaborative DNA do they have, right? Because if that's not there, then I don't see these efforts going too far. For a country like India, where we know that there are so many different communities here, you need a very different sort of an approach to begin with.
Yeah, Chetan, I would love for us to talk a little bit more about this. You said problems in India are complex, they are layered, solution probably already exists, system needs shifts and improvement. And the last thing we want is capital making a mistake around this line. And this collaborative DNA, I want you to talk a little bit more about. I think it's important because they are the owners of capital. And when we think about how capital is generated in the corporate world, it's a different journey. Perhaps problems they're not that complex, they're not that layered, they're not that differentiated. But in the human world that we want to deploy solutions, whether it's water, whether it's sanitation, mental health, skilling, disability, it's a different thing. So please speak a little bit more about the collaborative DNA of big philanthropy. How are you seeing that play out?
Big or small, but I think that collaborative DNA is essential. Let's look at, let's take an example of, let's say, disability. Okay, if there is a foundation, which decides to invest in addressing the challenges of disability right now, they will perforce need to work with several relatively smaller organizations who are doing deep work, because a field like disability requires deep work. It requires intensive efforts before you can really begin to make changes, because there you're talking about not just certain physical conditions, but you're talking about mindsets. You're talking about things that are that are sometimes stigma that is centuries old, right? So you have to do a lot of deep work. And we know that there isn't a single organization in the country today which can claim to have the solutions for this sector. Disability is a wonderful example, and as I, for the last few years, have been getting to know more and more of it, I think while we tend to bucket persons with disabilities in a single 3-word phrase, but there's so much more to it. The government has now identified 21 different kinds of disabilities. So you need 21 different kinds of solutions. And then within these also you have the age factor. The solutions that would work for a child with a disability may not work for an adult with a disability, so on and so forth. So you need various deep solutions, right? And therefore, for a philanthropist who want to address this, I will have to first identify a number of these such smaller organizations who are working with depth and who can show me what the solutions could be, and then I can use my by being a large philanthropist, I'm assuming that I have the muscle to think about how the solution can now be scaled, right? Which will require technology, which will require more people to work on it, so on and so forth. Now, unless I, as a philanthropist, do not have the collaborative DNA, I will not be able to get a consortium of organizations who are working at the implementing level to do this together. And similarly, if I am a small NGO that is content working in wherever that I am, but if my thinking is not collaborative, I'll just stay here. I will be insecure about the idea of sharing solutions with others. I'll be, I will not be able to find others like me who also have perspectives on the challenges that I'm trying to address, right? So I think this collaborative DNA is extremely important for people who are working in the sector. I mean, I've seen phenomenally talented individuals and organizations not being able to live up to their potential only because they were just too non-collaborative, I can say so.
That's fascinating. And again, this, competition versus collaboration, it's a different DNA that has to be built. Yeah. Even though the origins of philanthropic capital may have come from a space of high competition and winning, here it will have to be a brand new DNA created.
Absolutely. And, it's these small things that matter. I mean, in the past, when we've had to collaborate with other large corporates, sometimes it just becomes so frustrating because, you end up splitting your hair over things like, whose logo will go there and stuff like that. I think, these should just be dealt with, like this, and go ahead and, do what is required to be done.
Yes, anybody's logo would work.
Yeah, I mean, there are just ways to do this more meaningfully.
Chetan, I just want to bring this entire conversation together and your journey together. And please bring the audience back into where you began. What are the assumptions that you held about this sector that have completely changed now, 25 years later? It's a question I wanted to ask you. The other question I want you to weave in is that, is CSR going to bring in that vehicle for system reform?
Okay.
Given all the challenges of non-collaboration that we may face with pooled and patient capital. So both these things, what are the assumptions that changed for you? And it's a complex question, but I want you to, now that I have you here, to unpack that.
Yeah, in fact, I think I've shared with you that when I completed 20 years of my journey in the sector, I tried to put together a series of, some of thoughts, and I managed to compile that into this little booklet called 20 Years, 20 Insights. It's available on my LinkedIn platform for anybody to see. And there, I was recently reflecting, because it's about 5 years since I wrote that. I was reflecting what are the things in that 20 Years, 20 Insights that I would still hold on to, and which are the ones where I would want to challenge. One of the beliefs that I've always held for a very long phase of my journey is that scale and quality, or scale and grain as I like to call it, are opposites. And therefore, if you focus only on scale, you will not be able to do justice to the grain. And if you only focus on the grain, you won't be able to grow, right? But now I realize that we are not talking about opposites here, but we're talking about polarities. Mm-hmm. Okay. We are talking about how it's not a this or that, but how it's a journey that leads from one to the other, right? It's also important to understand that you, as an implementing organization in the sector, are free to define scale the way that you want. You know, there is nowhere it's written that scale must mean X millions, right? For me, if I am an organization working in a block, scale might mean, or let's say the average population of a district in India is about 1.5 million, if I'm not mistaken. So, and if I'm working in that district, for me, scale could just mean ensuring that for these 1.5 million in my district, I'm able to bring the solution, right? I'm not thinking about the state. I'm not thinking about the country. For me, scale is that. And 1.5 million is huge. I mean, it's right. So it's important to define what scale means for you is the first thing that I'll say here. So when you think about it like that, when you put something which is more finite to the idea of scale, it kind of becomes easier for you in your head to sort of grapple with. And then, as I said earlier, see, scale for a country like India is an imperative. You have to have that, somewhere in your scheme of things. But the journey to scale starts with the grain. So you have to first solve for the grain, right? And make sure that the solution is not just a temporary, immediate one, but a lasting one, right? And then say that, okay, let me now attempt taking it to scale. I mean, some of it can happen concurrently, but a lot of it is one followed by the other, right? So in that way, earlier, while I used to be almost afraid of the idea of scale or not willing to address that, some of my early experiences in the sector probably led me to believe that scale is an anathema. I've now kind of more reconciled to the idea, or accepted and agreed with this, that no, it can't be that, you have to shy away from taking something on scale. And my experience of working here at Mahindra Foundation in the last few years has really helped me that. And it is only with that confidence that we have more recently embarked on this idea of the ability network, which is an attempt to address the challenge of disability at scale, at significant scale. So I'd say that that's one. I'll give you one more example about what has changed. And this is also, I might want to even call it my experiments with trust. Knowing myself, I am basically somebody who trusts people. That's been there. It has at times, most of the times it's helped me, sometimes it's harmed me, but I think that's what the journey is like, right? But then, as the stakes have changed for me in this role, where, I now have a fairly large responsibility of a large foundation, I do realize that, trust is not the same as blind faith. It's not the same as just blanket believing that, okay, people will be good and they will always show up when you ask them to, and they'll always do what they expect them to do. No, it comes with a certain framework within which you have to work. And these frameworks are what we can loosely call processes right now, right? So what I've realized is that the mantra is to say that bring in the right set of people, put in the right processes for things to work, right? And then respect the people and trust the processes. Okay, I think respect is something which is extremely important, which we often overlook in the context of trust, right? In fact, what the realization now is that while trust is the outcome, respect is the process. Okay, while trust is the destination, respect is the journey. And I think that's what we all need to look at. I used to earlier be very frustrated when my default belief in trust used to get ruptured. Right? But now I realize that there will be people of all kinds. But the point about respect is extremely important. Even if you are meeting somebody who is, I mean, we saw what happened in the cricket match that happened, right? Such a beautiful example where you could see the respect that the team had towards each other.
Yes.
So I think that's very important. It's important to understand that there will be people with differing thoughts. There will be, if you're talking about diversity, you have to first accept that there will be diversity, not just of ethnicity or gender, but there will be diversity of opinion and views as well, right? But I think in all of this, it's important to keep the element of respect, and that's something which I would really want to say that we need to think more about this before we start talking about trust.
And maybe that's also a good starting point to create the new DNA of collaboration.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't have collaboration without respect.
Yes. So, as we end this conversation, Chetan, if you had to advise a group of young change makers that are embarking on a journey of social entrepreneurship, they've heard sort of the journey that they have to go through, what would you ask them not to do?
Quite a few things, actually. First, I'll ask them not to take themselves too seriously. I mean, I've seen a lot of youngsters jump into it with the right intent, which is of course important, like we discussed, but they also tend to take themselves way too seriously, right? I think it's important to have that thing in you which tells you continuously that while what you are doing is extremely important, while what you're building is extremely important, you yourself may not be that important in the scheme of things.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So that is one. Second, can never be the Mr. Know-all and somebody who, so be very, very open to the idea of learning continuously. Learning should never stop. In fact, in this sector, it's all about so many new facets that you encounter almost every day, and therefore you have to go into it with a very open mindset, and so not being closed about things that you have experienced and you have felt, and therefore think that everything sort of revolves and builds around that. So that openness, acceptance to various perspectives is something which is extremely important. Third, I would say, however difficult the going might get, don't fear. Okay, I think fear is, to me, the root cause of negativity, right? There are ways. I mean, I have seen, the organization that I had founded with a lot of passion back in 2009 called EduLever do very well and then fail, right? And there were times when I thought this was like just the end of the road. But there are, you keep your chin up and that, something or the other will emerge. But the moment you start sliding into that slippery slope of despair, of, things not happening, then it's very difficult to get out of that. So you have to, people who are starting their journey, I would say that, be warned that it's not going to be easy. In fact, I've even written a piece a few years back about, I think it was pleasures and perils of being a social entrepreneur, or something like that, which I've said that, unlike entrepreneurship, where you think that there's going to be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, here it's not there, right? It's not like you're going to, but the pot of gold is there, but it just has a different kind of a gold in it, right? So that is there. You have the faith that if you're doing, everything right, you will find your pot of gold. But it is one which is going to require a lot from you for you to be strong, very strong, in
Yes.
order to traverse that path.
Well, if someone heard parts of this conversation, there is wisdom for the social entrepreneur, which we've just discussed. Those that are, civil society organization in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of their journeys, there's wisdom there. How do we work with the bureaucracy? There's clear nuance for staying, showing up and having feet on the ground. And for philanthropic capital, of course, there's patience pooled, but there is a collaboration DNA. I think that's not what we hear that often. And I hope that that's the message that everybody takes from this conversation. You've had a 20-year journey. I know you mentor and guide me many times, and I think the hard part is not to make up your beliefs based on your own limited experience, which, by the way, we do all the time. And if we can just keep an open mind, and we'll find our pot of gold in this sector, which really is defined as impacting as many people as we thought we could when we came in. And hopefully that's everybody's journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chetan.
Thank
Very,
you
very
so
nice
much.
talking to you.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.